What's up, everybody? Welcome to the High Level Husband Podcast. Joined by Diane today.
Hello.
Gave you kind of a little pause there, babe,
Yeah.
on that one. But you guys, we're going to continue on today with our series that we're doing on right now of Christian Intimacy Masterclass. This is going to be episode 2, and we're going to be talking about toys and porn.
hmm
It's kind of a taboo topic, especially in the Christian world. I really believe, babe, that God has put that mission on our life. And we've had that spoken over from multiple different people who have encouraged us on this specific topic, is that sex and intimacy and things like toys and all of that just doesn't get talked about.
hmm
It's like an unspoken thing in the church, and then nobody really knows. And then if you don't really know, you're not really being guided on it. And so God specifically gives us all unique abilities and talents and traits with specific mission. And he's given us that for us as marriage, but in leadership, but also in the intimacy department, for it to be real with a lot of people. Be honest with you, babe. I think this is probably the same thing for you. Maybe more for me would have been okay, but for you, this is such a different topic for a lot of people. I never thought this would be our path.
Me either. But I'm glad that you said that about it not being spoken in public places like the church, or people get so confused and they don't know what's acceptable and what's not. And that's what makes it hard, is because then they could end up sinning or doing something that they feel convicted of because they don't know what's right and wrong, and they don't know what they should be doing or not.
Exactly. Or maybe they're missing out on certain things that is okay.
Right.
And then that's causing friction in their marriage because, they just lay there in the missionary position and they do it twice a month and they call it good because they're just so weirded out about this. We've worked with multiple people who have waited to get married, to have sex, which I'm always going to encourage everybody to do, because there's God's way and there's the wrong way.
hmm
Do not tempt that, and do not walk the line, and do not use God's grace as a get out of jail free card, because if you're using it as that, you're using it in the wrong way
hmm
on that. And anyways, and so when people come in, they have a hard time sometimes shaking that when they've waited for marriage, shaking the stigma that sex is bad.
hmm
Now, sex is not bad in marriage. Before marriage, it is a bad thing. And because of that, they then bring this mindset into it because they haven't been taught in the church, in the public space. Here's what we're talking about intimacy and marriage and how it's beautiful, and celebrate it and encourage and all of that. It's just avoided. So then they don't get taught the process of going from, hey, now where it's a no, to now it's like we go 100 miles per hour if we want. And I'm not dogging all churches or all pastors or leaders in it, because there's a lot of amazing ones as well. It's just from what I've experienced, it just gets glanced over.
hmm
In so many different aspects. And so we're going to dive in, guys, on like the 3 main topics on that. But one of the things that you said, babe, was so good, was convictions. And so it talks about this in the Bible. I don't have the verse on the top of my head, but it very well might be in 1st or 2nd Corinthians. It might be in 1st, but I could be wrong. Where Paul's really talking about how what's okay for one person is not okay for the next. We all have our different personal convictions,
hmm
and there's different reasons why. Like, I don't drink, and I recommend that nobody drinks. But for example, let's just say somebody can, and it is okay for them to do. That might be okay for that one person, but for the 99 out of the 100, it might not be.
hmm
And so that doesn't mean just because, you know, Mark down the street can drink, that doesn't mean you can. That's your own personal convictions on all this. But how do we understand that? That's the more time you spend with God,
hmm
you'll understand that. You spend less time with God, the more you'll be confused on that. And our own personal convictions are different, like on that. So some of the things we're going to speak on that we do in our lovemaking may not be okay for you because of your personal convictions, because they could lead you astray.
hmm
Whereas there might not lead me and Diane astray, but they might lead you astray. So you always have to go to the Father first, pray and then plan, rather than plan and then pray.
hmm
This is why the number one thing we need to do in life is spend quality time every single day with the Father. The more we do that, the closer we get to him and the better instructions we get. And so our own personal convictions, because we've pushed the limits in lovemaking before.
Yeah, we've pushed the limits, and we realized that our hearts were convicted on that. God was convicting us of that, like, you've pushed the limits. This isn't okay for you. This isn't going to work for you guys.
Exactly. And what I noticed about those times that we were pushing the limits was when
hmm
the times that we were the least fulfilled, or the least spending time with God, or
Uh-huh.
the least doing our purpose in life and really having God as number one, that then, as the Bible verse, and I spoke this on a couple podcasts ago, but like flesh gives birth to flesh, spirit gives birth to spirit. So the more you're giving into your fleshly temptations, the bigger ones that are going to come.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that in intimacy, where we felt like we always needed to push the limits.
Mm-hmm.
We need to add these other things in, which is why today's topic is so good at that. Well, we always need to be pushing the limits to having it be different and better. And in a secular world, yeah, that's going to be true, because it's not going to be spirit filled. But in a Christ-centered marriage, you don't need to push the limits in those aspects, and it still gets better and better in all those aspects. Now, can you try new things because of your communication with your wife, but first with communication with God, then that you feel okay with? Now, if you try it and you don't feel okay, repent, talk to God about that, talk to your spouse about it, tell him this is why. I know when we've tried things, I didn't like it when you were like, you, especially as this would be more fleshly though, when you were like, no, definitely not. Nope. You were closed off to everything. I wanted an open mind. And you were saying no, not because of your convictions though. I want that to be understood.
Yeah.
It wasn't like your convictions were telling you no and I was pushing you on it.
No.
You were just being a prude.
Yeah. I was closed off. Excuse me. I was closed off to the ideas of new things, but that was in all areas of my life. So it wasn't just with sex, it was in all areas of my life, and it just came through on that as well.
That's great that you mentioned that, because babe, like when you grow in one area and you challenge yourself in one area, it becomes easier. I was just talking about that with one of our clients today on a call, where it's like when you start being obedient to the little things, then you start seeing fruit from them and you see how God shows up. Then not only can he trust you with bigger things, as the Bible verse says, you can be trusted with little, can be trusted with many, but also you start, I hate to say it this way, but start trusting God a little bit more, because you've seen him doing these things in the little things. Then the next time he asks you to do this next bigger thing, it's going to be more uncomfortable than the little ones, but you've seen the fruit on that of him showing up. You have to give him a chance to show you that he's real. But if you just read the Bible and just go to church, but yet you don't put it into action, you're never going to see what God can do in your life, and you're missing the mark on all of it. But it's so good what you're saying is like you were growing, and then you were challenging yourself with coaching and entrepreneurship and fitness and all these other areas. And so then when it trickled to the bedroom, you were a little more open to talk about it and not be closed off, and then be willing to try some things. Now, we were so close on the communication that it was good. I never forced you to do anything that you didn't want to do, or anything, because I wouldn't want that. And over the years, like we said, we tried things that we didn't like. We were like, and immediately we were like, nah, we can't be doing this.
Yeah. And I think that God really convicted both of our hearts at the same time in those things, to show us that like not one of us was like, oh yeah, excited about it, and the other one, was like, absolute not, and so I think that really he convicted both of our hearts at the same time to show us that like, yeah, you guys pushed the limits a little bit too far on that.
Which is the point of being equally yoked.
Right.
Because it was just like we had that experience out at the Texas church last weekend when we were speaking, or 2 weekends ago when we were speaking. I won't talk about it right now, but it was like I hadn't even told you what I was about to do. I got hit with on the moment, and I said, I'm about to do this, and I couldn't back down. And I said, and Diane doesn't even know, but I know she'll be 100% okay. And then you looked at me and you said,
I already know what you're going to do.
I know what you're going to do. How do you know? Because we're so close with our quality time, but yet we have so much quality time with the Father. We're equally yoked in all those different areas. And so the Spirit already told you what I was about to do. And the look in your eye was like, yep, go for it. And so I did it. And that's the same thing as like what you're saying in sex. Like we were so equally yoked that we both knew it. So, but if we're not, then it will be like, well, what? You don't want to do? Oh, you're back to being a prude again, huh? Like you don't ever want to do anything. We're just going to have same old boring sex forever. And it's just like, well, no, like our love comes first and God comes first on all of that. So we touched on that a ton. So guys, you have to lean on your personal convictions, because I get a lot of DMs or things like that. And people are like, is oral okay? Is this okay? Now, we'll just touch on it. Is oral okay for us? Yes, we're fine with that. But for you, that might not be if your personal convictions are telling you no. Now, what we always say is if you did something 10 years ago and you just haven't tried it again because you didn't like it back then, guess what? Now, if your convictions aren't necessarily one way or another, give it a shot. And if you don't like it, tell your partner that you didn't enjoy it and why and all that. But if you have to do that in a loving way, because if you just pull back and then they go to do it again and you tell no, then they're going to be like, well, what's going on? That's why communication in a loving way is good. And so I was like, babe, I did that. I know you enjoyed it, but I'll be honest with you. I just didn't feel right about it. I didn't enjoy that myself. I felt very uncomfortable. And I honestly just feel like it's not what's best for me. So I'm sorry I'm just not going to do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it is what it is.
Right. But that you, if you're open to trying it, then that's good. Like try it. Like you said, I loved how you said it. Like if it's been 10 years, I mean, we're the same thing. We do the same thing with like food, right? Like if you tried something 10 years ago and you hated it, you might absolutely think it's your favorite food now, you know? So it's the same thing. You have to be open to trying new things, even if you think you don't like it. Until you try it, you don't really know, you know? And,
Yeah.
but that's what you're saying. Communication is absolutely 100% needed in all of that. Otherwise, things are going to go in the wrong direction.
And you can do it in the moment, or you can do it
Mm-hmm.
when you're just having your normal. That's why the importance of always
Quality
having so much
time.
quality time is you can talk about these things, babe, I'd really like maybe if we try this.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, you can talk about it. So then if you go in the moment, it doesn't ruin the moment,
Mm-hmm.
or they don't feel pressured. And then if they do it, and even though they didn't want to do it, then maybe next time they go into sex, they don't want to have sex because they knew last time you kind of made them do something or kind of tried something, and they didn't want to say no in the moment because they didn't want to hurt your feelings. But now they don't want to do it again because they don't want to know they don't know what you're going to do again next.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why communication on it is so huge, to be able to talk about it so it doesn't ruin the moment, and they want to go back again and again for the intimacy on it. And you're so right about the food. It's so funny because I was just about to say that for about kids is like, you just want your kids to be able to try some foods, and you're stoked if they try it. And if they don't like it, you'll back off. But if they don't ever try it, you're going to be frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so just try it out. It's not the end of the world
Mm-hmm.
on it. And so that's a huge part. So let's dive into the next two topics of like porn and conviction, or porn and toys on this one here. So I think years ago, I mean, I guess I grew up when we're like, it was still dial up internet and things like that. So I just personally never really got into porn all that much, other than like pictures and things like that, magazines. And by the time porn really came on the scene as like, internet and things like that, I was pretty much out of it. Of course, I think through the years, like I had watched it maybe, I don't know, 10 times in the course of my, in the past 20 years, at best. And, but so it was never really an issue with me. But I remember there was a few times but we didn't watch it online. Like, somebody had given us like my brother had, God, sorry, bro, I'm gonna throw you under the table here, bro. Had like some DVDs, and like this is I was a believer at the time, and I think you were very beginning stages, and but I wasn't a follower. And he had given us some. He's like, dude, this is amazing. When we've burned them out, but here, you guys take them. And so we had watched them, and
I forgot about that.
you remember that?
And now I do.
And I just remember like what it ends up doing is now you start seeing these girls who
Mm-hmm.
very well might be hotter than your wife, or they're definitely doing things in the videos.
They're pushing the limits in different ways than maybe your wife, or you haven't even had those conversations to see if your wife is even comfortable with. But
then the expectations get built,
mm-hmm.
and all of that. Yeah. And then now it's not real. There's this guy who started following me, and I started following him back, and he does like intimacy, but more for like single guys and things like that. I mean, it's more secular on that, despite I'm not going to drop his name here because I'm not trying to push into like premarital sex, but he's an ex porn star. And what he was saying about it, he's like, dude, to be real with you, majority of the positions we're doing are not enjoyable at all for either of us. We do it because that's what keeps it different, so people watch. So we're not always doing the positions that are the most enjoyable for normal people. Mm-hmm. And so it's the same thing. So you watch these things, and it just tarnishes and invites demonic spirits into your house. And if you don't think that that's real, I'm just telling you it is. And so you're inviting all of this in there, and now you're building up all this stuff, and it just really tarnishes it. And I was actually thinking about, before this call, there was one time, because we only maybe watched it maybe like five or six times at best. And that was, gosh, probably 15 years ago. I remember there was this one time we were watching it, and you were getting worked up, and you went upstairs, and you were like, all right, well, let's go. And I was like, oh, I want to continue to watch this. And I think I was teasing you. And then like you went upstairs, and then I showed up, and you were almost at like finishing, and you were like, you better hurry up because you're about to miss the party. And so now you're upstairs taking care of yourself, which is a sin. Now, if we're doing it together and you're taking care of yourself together, that's a little bit different story. Again, convictions.
Right.
You lean on your guys' convictions because we do that together in those moments. We don't see an issue with it with us. Your own personal convictions. But I almost missed the party, and you were doing it by yourself. Again, now taking away from our experience, taking away and inviting these things into a marriage. So, guys, never, this is not a personal conviction. Never invite porn into your marriage, ever, ever. We should just do a whole podcast on this, babe, on like the
Right.
implications of porn in a marriage,
Mm-hmm.
let alone we're just doing this as if you're watching it together.
Mm-hmm.
Do not, do not bring it in on just the facts of what it'll do, of expectations, of all these other things. And then now you need the stimulus of somebody else turning you on to go make love to your wife.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. And then you'll have images of this other person while you're making love to your wife,
Mm-hmm.
or vice versa. She has images of another dude while she's making love to you. And then now now she's watching this buff, jacked, ripped dude, and you got this dad bod. She's not stoked with you anymore. Now, every time you see a dude with a dad, a jacked body and all these other things that might resemble him, she's going to get turned on because it's going to stimulate. Last time I orgasmed, I was watching this dude over here, and then my husband, who really isn't look like him, doesn't do it for me anymore. And then
Mm-hmm.
she starts picturing him again and again, because now maybe that session, the lovemaking, was even more intense, but it was only intense because she's watching this other guy who's now fresh and new in her mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now bring that, and it's just going to ruin the marriage. Now, in that moment, might you have a pleasurable time? Sure. It might be an intense session for the moment. That's momentary pleasure. We're ruining your marriage for that, and it will build up, I promise you. And it invites all these other things into the marriage, and it'll ruin it. Do not do it.
Yeah, because we've seen the flip side of it, of marriages that we've helped, where the man was, into porn alt for many years, and then stopped, and with our, guidance on that, and stopped watching porn, and how their marriages transform, like,
Insane.
amazing, yeah, it's so amazing. And so you see what the flip side is when you aren't doing it. So it's amazing.
Yeah, and great said that, because then people can justify it, like, well, I'm watching it with my spouse. No, no, I don't care. I
Mm-mm.
do not care. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, I'm using this as bold, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Do not do it, because I promise you, it will bring things into your marriage that you do not want to open that door. Once you walk through the door, you do not just get to walk back out. I
Yeah.
promise you, do not do it. Protect yourself. Do not find out. And if you've been doing it, stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Cut it off now. Repent, pray, get deliverance, all the different things from it. So, babe, let's jump into the next one, toys. This one right here would be convictions for some people and some not, right? And you got to be very careful with this as well on it, because we'll incorporate it a little bit from time to time, but we have to be very careful, because you don't want to become too dependent on that aspect that's not foreign to our bodies.
Right. And we've seen that before in couples that we've helped too, where the wife can't get off without it, and you don't want it to be like a dependent, because a natural body can't do the same
Replicate.
things. They can't replicate what a lot of the toys and stuff can. And so that's a very risky area. So you have to be really, really cautious with that.
Very cautious. And then now the husband thinks, well, I can't do this for you.
Mm-hmm.
Only this toy can.
Right. You're only getting off with the toy. You can't with me.
And that kills your masculine leadership.
Mhm.
That kills, and then the masculine feelings of that starts thinking that. And then, but you don't want to tell your wife that you're being emasculated. So you're not going to even, now you're going to ruin, talk about it. Cause you're not going to say, hey, babe, I feel like we need to remove, the toys, because I'm feeling like less of a man, because most men aren't in that spot to do that. Now, if I felt that way, I would 100% tell you we're at that, because we're at black belt level communication
Mm-hmm.
of things,
Yeah.
but we've had to work towards that. But I would have, because over the years, there's been battles of, like, it was like the time, after you had, after you started having kids. Before, you used to be able to orgasm through penetration really easily.
Vaginally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, afterwards,
There was
it,
struggle.
it
There
was
was
a
struggling.
struggle.
Mm-hmm.
You could only do it through, like, clitoris
Mm-hmm.
stimulation.
Yeah.
And that was frustrating for me. And that was like, as a man, like, dude, I can't get my wife there anymore. But I used to, the blessing was I used to be able to, then now I couldn't. And it was because you had kids and things. And over the years, like, there was a years stretch, but
Mm-hmm.
through communication,
Mm-hmm.
but also I think through your personal development, and then also your growth with the Holy Spirit and
Mm-hmm.
Father, we've worked through a lot of those things. It's now been able to bring it back, not fully to where it was, but a lot back closer
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of those different areas.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was just my mind couldn't even allow myself to even work on that during that time,
Yeah.
So I think that's half of it probably, was that I was so unconfident with myself and didn't even want you to see me, that hindered even me getting to that point, I think, and so I think there's probably a million women that deal with the same thing.
Right.
So
And so there's a lot of different aspects of that, guys. I don't want to get off topic here,
yeah,
but that's where
sorry.
we'll just say with toys. No, because I could do a whole talk on what you just said there. That was really good,
Yeah.
because that's why a lot of women don't want to have sex too, guys. This isn't always about you and
Mm-hmm.
your lack of leadership. Now that is plays a part in it. Sometimes if your wife is really really struggling, but if she is struggling, it's happening on your watch,
Mm-hmm.
and that's hard to hear, but it's the truth. It's happening on your watch. And so if she's not happy with her physical appearance, her spiritual well-being, all these other things, struggling with depression or anxiety, it is happening on your watch, and that's the hard thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that being said, um, that's going to impact intimacy, where they won't want to go there because they don't want you to see them naked. They're going to be in their head. Maybe they're not going to be able to orgasm, and just the way the devil plays with them, they don't want you to think that you can't make them orgasm. So they don't want
Mm-hmm.
to hurt your feelings. And so it's just better for them to not do it. It's just a crazy game that gets played, and it ruins everything. How do you do that? Talk about it. You talk about it. Quality time, guys. So with the toys things, be very, very careful about this. Be very cautious. Once
Mm-hmm.
again, convictions for yourself,
Right.
and do not make it an every single time thing. Now
Right.
you have to experiment. If the toys are only able to get it off, try to replicate that for yourself with who in certain things you can do for your partner, and but you have to talk about it. You have to work through it. You have to be somebody who is more attractive, who's building up the intimacy throughout the day, the flirting, all of that stuff to get her ready. Because it's like the times where we just like turn it on, it's almost planned. It like prolongs like that to get the engine revved. But when we know when it's like primed, like you get there super fast.
Mm-hmm.
But the other times it doesn't, and it just shows on like how important all the other stuff plays into it. So there's a lot of different aspects into this, guys. But we wanted to touch on the toys. Be very careful with this. Be very, very careful with it. Um, and if I always lead for the caution of no, then yes. If you're not in that spot of unsure,
Mm-hmm.
always play it safe. I'd rather be obedient to something that God's not asking me to do than being disobedient to something that he is.
Right.
And so that's where you have to really talk about it and all those things. And like we've said, the closer we've gotten, the more we're deeper we are with the Lord, the less we have to push the limits in sex,
Mm-hmm.
but yet the better it gets in those different areas.
Yeah, I feel like the closer we become to God, it's already exciting. We don't need all these excess things for it to be exciting. It's just absolutely amazing without them.
Yeah.
Without pushing the limits to the point where it does get uncomfortable.
Yeah. And so sex can ruin things too. It can be, you could be killing it in all the different areas of your life, spiritually, all these other things. But because you've not talked about sex, and I'll tell you how many couples do not talk about it, break it down, or anything, they don't even know. And so
Mm-hmm.
then it's like there's something that's happening there that's not getting addressed,
Mm-hmm.
that's now becoming a cancer in the relationship. And it starts from that. But one domino knocks over the next. Sometimes it can start in intimacy and knock it down the other way. Sometimes it's all the other areas that lead to intimacy. But that's why we'll always encourage you, when you're killing it mentally, physically, spiritually, and relationally. Number one is spiritually, with like relationship with God, when you love him with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength, like truly, truly. And I'll tell you, I've met very few people who are like that. Um, you can talk about all that other stuff, but without that, your flesh will tell you no.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's so important
Yeah.
on that, guys. So we hope this benefited you. If so, please, we would love to rate this a 5-star podcast. And if you're on YouTube, give us a subscribe and a like on all of that. But either way, guys, we appreciate you. And if you want coaching, we're getting insane transformations. There's a lot of cool things happening in our community, and it's really, really just a brotherhood of awesome men. We have a high level wives program as well. If you want that, click the link below, and we'll call with our team. We'll go from there. So love you guys. Much love. God bless.
Bye.